Somewhere, Manatsu isn't feeling so tropical shining, and she doesn't know why.
But now it's all over. It doesn't matter anymore.
Our film opened with someone grabbing a shiny round object.
But wait, I know what happens next. They summon Shenron, then Piccolo gets captured and brainwashed, then they have this big overblown fight with this giant mech that feels incredibly out of place and...
Or they just summoned a bunch of knockoff Vanillites. That works too, I guess. Meanwhile, everyone was just enjoying an average beach day at Waikiki. Well, other than the big balloon monster that supposedly had drained their motivation, but I still maintain this is just your average day at Waikiki, damn it. Anyway, our heroines defeated the cameoing Numeri, who just for this one movie scene was wearing a short-sleeve lab coat. Don't know why they didn't use this look more in the show proper, but whatever. The fight was short, but still fairly well animated, and this is the first sequence of the film, so I'm sure we'll get some more impressive stuff later. However, in spite of their victory, a certain fish girl just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, Laura, I think even the most die-hard fans of this series would have to disagree with you on that.
Song suggested that they could sing for an event at the mall, but that would have to wait until the end of the film, as the aforementioned puffballs had arrived with a message from, Dianchi?
No, I'm pretty sure that was the last movie's ripped-off gimmick.
But yeah, it was actually an invitation from Princess Sharon of the Kingdom of Shantia. Apparently, she had sent her Hawaiian spirits to find a bunch of people capable of making an utter smile to witness her coronation as the next ruler of her kingdom. Which, as we'd soon see, aside from our main heroines, mostly entailed a lot of rando street performers, which, considering her intentions later in the film, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, Manatsu of course accepted the invitation, but not exactly for the reasons you'd expect.
We have plenty of that in our islands, and I'm pretty sure it tastes a lot better in a tropical climate rather than in the snow.
Yeah, unfortunately, a consequence of having Yoshimi Narita be the writer of this film meant that she also just had to conform to the many standard tropes of the franchise, which included Manatsu being a little more idiotic than usual just because. It also meant don't expect any Isao Murayama level world building, as apparently to get to the kingdom, they just got on a magic train out of nowhere at their town's normal train station. Yeah, no Hogwarts-esque portals to a different platform, just the magic train coming out of nowhere. Still, I will give this opening this. It was cute. All of our heroines were wearing very fashionable new looks, and I absolutely love this bit of Asuka being rejected by the rest of her team from singing with them, but then was joined by a sympathetic Minori who just continued to ignore her. It's hilarious and gave our heroines more characterization than some whole episodes of the show proper, which is Narita's specialty. No, and there was also a very easy blink and you'll miss them appearance from that one other team that they made a big deal in all of the advertising. In fact, you kind of need the pause button to see them. Anyway, they soon arrived in Shantia and saw a bunch of other living snow critters, and yet this didn't deter Manatsu from wanting her precious shaved ice, even though for all she knew, she could end up being a sleeping snow bunny or something.
I mean, what's next? A snowman who eats snow? Oh wait.
Thankfully, karmic justice came to our main heroine who tried to run out in the snow in just her suspenders. Fortunately, the Hawaiian had the plot-convenient power to make anything out of thin air, including more new looks for our heroines.
Hey, save that for the Keijo games that unfortunately aren't going to get a second season.
They made their way to the castle, and while I'll say right now that some of the casual scenes in this film are very awkwardly animated, like what the hell is the deal with this perspective, the backgrounds here are absolutely astonishing. I just love how from this one tracking shot, we could tell that Shantia's architecture seemed to borrow from many different cultures across Eurasia. Minori would even note how the castle's interior seemed to blend many different aesthetics. This would end up very cleverly foreshadowing future revelations in the film, so definite A+ to all of the art designers in this. They soon met Princess Sharon, who, yeah, I'm just gonna call Elsa for the remainder of this film, because that's totally who they're trying to rip off here. Anyway, Laura introduced herself to the Snow Princess, which, yeah, meant that they hadn't previously met, like I originally assumed, because I was thinking about Nico from the Smile movie. But yeah, I was wrong, and there's probably gonna be no other comparisons between the two. Afterwards, our heroines went to play in the snow and dead. Oh, no, she's fine.
Okay, seriously, why do these Precure leads even need superpowers anymore?
Anyway, they had a little snowball fight, and oh hey, Erika, nice to see y'all finally joined the film. Yeah, aside from that aforementioned really easy to miss shot on the train, the Heartcatch team just kind of show up out of nowhere. Granted, this is still leagues better incorporation of the guest team than the S5 from the previous film, as at least they are starting from their civilian forms, and there is a plot reason for them being here having also been invited by Elsa. Still, it would have been nice to see more of them on the train, not necessarily interacting with the tropical team, but at least doing something and not dedicating so much time to these randos. All that said, I will say, at least these first interactions between the memeable blues were every bit as hilarious as advertised, and I really like this bit of Minori going full Squidward.
My left flank is exposed. Wait, that makes my north wall a weak spot. Ha!
And a lot of these groupings work surprisingly well, like the sporty types and the brains all in one sleigh. Granted, the pairing between Tsubomi and Manatsu was a little off, especially considering the difference in IQs.
Oh, come on, it's okay. I mean, as long as you avoid the yellow snow.
But yeah, while I still think there were better teams that Tropical Rouge could have synced up with, they made this work for the most part, even alternating between the pairings at times. Personal favorite was the Fashionistas, if only because it gave poor Sango more screen time. However, being the requisite exposition dumper of her series, Yuri couldn't help but feel like something was a little bit off about the kingdom. Later, the Tropical Club discussed the performance they were going to put on at Elsa's coronation. Of course, Laura assigned herself the role of maid vocalist, and even picked out her stage outfit, which, yeah, that's a good basis for a Dracofish cosplay at least. Very understandably, Erika tried to provide a proper design for her, but the clashing of the two blue eagles didn't match well, and Laura took her leave. To cool off, she decided to take in the castle's pond, leading into the trailer scene where she conversed with her fellow queen candidate. Of course, when actually discussing the subject of their kingdoms, Laura did need to bring up the little issue that all of her people had essentially become a bunch of lazy neats, which shouldn't be anything unusual in modern society, but not in her case.
Oh, that is so tragic. Say, could you give me a few more details?
Alright, to be fair, she wasn't totally sus just yet, but considering we're about 20 minutes into the film with no real conflict other than the intro fight, it was pretty obvious where this was going. More importantly though, we got some character building for Laura that we didn't really get in the show proper.
You know, I'm kind of glad I delayed that overview because I am going to remember that line once we get to a certain episode in that video.
But anyway, Elsa gave her the Miracle Light replacement for the film, as well as taught her a song that was obviously gonna be plot relevant later.
Not complain, mind you. I mean, at least Elsa didn't teach her a certain other song.
We'll talk more about this scene later, but for now, I'll just say I like this interaction between Manatsu and Erika a lot more. Part of that might have been because it was building off of Erika's own character development across the course of her series, with her being able to recognize that while Laura was certainly being a prima donna as usual, she did kind of gaslight her and made her feel uncomfortable the same way she felt when others wouldn't let her speak. Fortunately, Manatsu was there to assure that she'd cheer up her friend when needed.
Really good stuff that reminds us that Erika is more than just a meme machine, even though that's probably what most people remember her as.
Later, Erika apologized and just offered her design to Laura. In return, Laura also apologized for her behavior, again making for a really good scene that really showed off how the blues kind of took over the show, but we'll talk more about that later. Anyway, the coronation ceremony started without much of an audience and the king and queen absent, as Minori and Asuka pointed out. But hey, y'all just came to a magical kingdom in the middle of nowhere, so I'm sure nothing bad will happen. Well, other than a couple of baby fairies getting lost, but that's just par for the course, really. Also, they needed a reason for the Heartcatch team to not be around for the initial fight. Anyway, the street performers did their acts with animation that wasn't that much better than what's shown on TV, but still, it was enough that Elsa really wanted to keep them around.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
I mean, yeah, this turn was plain as daylight, but you really dropped the facade just because some second-rate performer said they want to go home? What's wrong with just seizing them at the border or something?
Just saying, Elsa, if you want to be an evil tyrant, then you have a lot of real-life examples you could borrow from, and I'm gonna stop there.
But yeah, in case you thought I was exaggerating with all the Frozen references, here's a bunch of knockoff marshmallows. And considering this is the last shot we see of the Huans, I'm gonna assume they're either dead or were turned into these things. Pick your poison. Also, apparently these things could freeze hearts and steal motivation. I'm pretty sure something else should happen if your heart stops, but more on this later. Anyway, transformation time, and of course, since this is a movie, they had to include the full sequences, thank god for the fast forward button. And the initial fight with just the tropical team was, as is usually the case with the series proper, kind of short and just okay. It did get better once the Heartcatch team joined in, and I will admit, I got a chuckle out of this. They also transformed, and wait, Yuri still needs to restore her seed?
So, like, does this take place before the grand finale of Heartcatch, or in a separate timeline? Because God knows it's impossible to try and make sense of the chronology of Precure, and, you know, I just played the right clip.
The answer is don't think about it.
Anyway, this is probably the best fight of the film, mostly because it is just great to see this team in action one more time, and some of the combo attacks were pretty clever, even the silly ones. Most importantly was Sango's barrier being useful thanks to another barrier warrior being around. However, Elsa interrupted the festivities to of course provide her tragic villain backstory. Apparently, she was indeed supposed to be the queen of this kingdom, but a little wrench got thrown into that.
No, that is just so sad.
Everyone died. The end.
I mean, okay, it is a legit tragic backstory, especially when it happened during Elsa's coronation of all days, but again, I refer you to the Anchorman clip. I mean, you can't just drop a freaking comet into your story out of nowhere like an RKO and not expect to get a bit of a laugh.
Now, delivery aside, the setup here is actually pretty good, as it does borrow from some real-life theories.
Yuri mentioned a comet striking Earth 12,000 years ago, which is referring to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. It posits that fragments of an asteroid or comet struck 4 major continents, including Eurasia. This would lead to another ice age, the extinction of several species, and the Pangea-esque effect of having cultures broken down into more cultures. This would explain why Shantia seems to be a hodgepodge of several Eurasia cultures, as at one time, at least in this world, they were one and the same.
Now, of course, this is just a hypothesis, and in fact, I think there's been a lot of evidence debunking it as mostly just a crackpot theory, but it is real enough for this movie, and I'll give them points for at least doing their homework.
But yeah, Elsa was trying to rebuild her kingdom with her Philosopher's Stone made from the remnants of the Younger Dryas comet. And since human transmutation isn't a thing, she tried to repopulate it with a bunch of street performers.
Oh, okay. What?
I mean, the Precure I get, they could make for a good royal guard, but telling your minions to just get people who can make others smile doesn't seem all that efficient, unless you want to recreate that one episode of The Twilight Zone. Of course, the Heartcatch team justifiably wanted to defeat Elsa because at this point, she was just a lingering spirit, but Laura wanted to save her because they had one good conversation. I mean, I'm not saying what she's doing here is necessarily wrong, but like throwing a comet in out of nowhere, it doesn't feel like they properly built up to her taking the bullet for Elsa. Hell, just have her beat Tsubomi and Erika normally here. It would make the villain look stronger and reduce this needless melodrama. They don't even really focus on Laura's mistake that much after they retreat, making it feel all the more superfluous. Anyway, they split up with Manatsu and Laura going to confront Elsa while the others went to rescue the Heartcatch team. And in spite of all the dramatics of having a veteran team be captured, they found them rather easily just a couple scenes later.
Barely an inconvenience.
In fact, the only thing that was separating them was a single wooden door that 7 superheroines couldn't get open.
They mastered spaceflight, but they can't get through a wooden door?
No, and in case you're thinking that it's some sort of magically enhanced door or something...
Soundwave superior, Autobots inferior. Leave me alone, I just want to play with my action figures!
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, the movie just kinda fell apart for me from this point on. I mean, I was kind of not feeling it when the animation was just not up to snub with the previous year's offerings, and then all the poorly built up twists and turns, and then this dumb joke that's on par with the dog poop. Not helped by the fact that the Heartcatch team just kinda took a total backseat after this scene of Tsubomi explaining Elsa's heart flower. Oh yeah, we haven't really brought up the actual leaders of either of these teams now, have we? But yeah, they just stayed behind to take care of a few measly grunts so that the tropical team could take most of the action for the final act. To be fair, they will provide a little support in just a minute, but still, it's disappointing that even the Yes team were part of the final battle of the Sea of Dreams for as poorly integrated as they were in that film. Anyway, Tsubomi had explained how Elsa's heart flower was of course a frozen snowdrop because we have to be on the nose with this stuff, and they would have to try and defrost it. And of course, by they, I actually mean Laura. Yeah, this really does become Laura's movie by the end, and while I do like some of the themes here of both girls knowing what it's like to essentially be one of the last of their kingdom, and the gravity of what that entails, it's more than a little undermined by the fact that these two only just met, and even the big climactic speech didn't amount to much other than the standard, do you think your parents would want this? Anyway, final boss fight time, as Elsa summoned her Pacific Rim Kaiju reject. And of course, our heroines countered with that obvious plot device from earlier that was being powered by their desires to save Elsa. They also got a little boost from the Heartcatch team, giving them some movie-exclusive forms that look like the super silhouette, and yet the originators of those forms weren't here, and instead they were just gonna summon another big dumb spirit animal thing.
Okay, so what? Are they gonna summon a giant polar bear to limbo this kaiju to death, or Heartcatch Orchestra? Okay, not gonna lie, that's pretty sweet.
I mean, sure, this big kaiju fight basically devolved into a slap fight, but hey, it's cool to see this big lady again, especially if we get to see her awesome finisher again.
And I retract all my previous compliments. Seriously, that was the best part of that big lady's attack.
So yes, she head-patted the kaiju to death, which also depowered the comet fragment, meaning that Elsa's last link to the human realm was gone, and that she was now going to leave this world with the regret that she had not really accomplished anything under her all too brief rule as queen of her kingdom. Okay, again, stuff like this is really good, as just through some visual storytelling and some choice words, we could really feel how much survivor's guilt this little snow princess felt for the short amount of time she had left as her body froze to death in the snow.
I really do think a story like this deserves to have a better movie to go around it, to give it the time and focus it deserves, as well as maybe a few better song sequences.
Yeah, of course, Laura, and later the rest of the team, sang the Kingdom's anthem, even though they were never taught any lyrics, so I'm just gonna assume they're making it up on the spot. I mean, it's a beautiful song and everything, but why in the hell do they have to animate just their mouths with such needless detail while their bodies remain mostly stationary? I mean, I'm not saying they have to move around like something out of Symphogear or even a full Idol performance, but you know, people do tend to move around at least a little, especially when singing, in order to get the words to come out naturally.
Trying to make up for a lack of movement with overly animated lips doesn't make it look good, it makes it look like Clutch Cargo.
Frank Whipple and his wife Amanda have been friends of mine for many years, Spinner.
Ugh.
I do have a theory as to why this scene ended up the way it did, but whatever. It managed to defrost Elsa's heart flower and saved her. And wait, she's still fainting away?
Okay, credit where it's due, they didn't try to force a happy ending like they did with the Happiness Charge film.
Elsa did pretty much die alongside the rest of her kingdom the day that comet fell, and while the snowdrop does represent hope, it can only ever be the hope that's built atop the ruins of this fallen kingdom. Though, thanks to Laura's assurance, this lost princess could at least now finally peacefully move on to the afterlife, knowing that she had left somewhat of a legacy with her mermaid friend.
This movie is just so frustrating when it has such good moments buried under such bad direction.
There's even a pretty good moment afterwards when everyone was teleported back to Alzora, and they theorized how Elsa might have given her the ring as a means of stopping her plans, as deep down she not only knew what she was doing was wrong, but that it was also probably doomed to fail anyway with the comet's finite power. Again, a really good scene, undermined by the eternal mood killer that is Manatsu Natsumi. Still, Laura wanted to keep her promise with Elsa, so the film ended with them going to that mall concert to perform Shantia's anthem with the Heartcatch and Healing Good teams watching? Wait, this was a triple crossover this whole time? Well, anyway, the film ended with a very nice CGI ending credits using the same engine as the series proper, though looking a little better with more dynamic backgrounds, including the snowy field that turned into a grassy meadow, kind of like that scene from just a few minutes ago. Yeah, like the Star Twinkle movie, I think the sequence was originally supposed to go there, and then this credit sequence would have been something else entirely. But because something got cut in the budget, they had to make a last minute change and slapdash these sequences together. Now, of course, I could be wrong, but it really is a shame that such a nice CGI sequence couldn't be used as a proper climax to this very disjointed film.
This movie, much like the series it spawned from, kind of evens out to just okay when all is said and done, maybe less so than the actual series.
It had a lot of stupid and just plain awkward moments, but also plenty of really good and even kind of powerful moments that couldn't reach their full potential because of some combination of poor planning and budgeting. Thus, while I do think the overall storytelling was disjointed and very messy, I will say the plot had some good ideas and themes.
It certainly does make up for the subpar animation, especially for something that had this in the actual show, as well as a movie in this franchise. But again, much like that show, at least I was able to laugh at how bad it got sometimes.
I'm not totally sure why this film felt like such a significant downgrade in terms of animation compared to the previous year's offering. Maybe it was the very distinct designs of Yukiko Nakatani and Yoshihiko Umekoshi not gelling well. I mean, you can certainly see the difference whenever they use the latter's stock animation. Or maybe it was the fact they had half the animation directors around. In neither scenario, it also does feel like it might have been caused by a lack of funds, which, as I'll try to explain in the series overview, might have been a recurring issue. Whatever the case, while there were some brilliantly directed scenes thanks to a veteran like Junji Shimizu of Fresh fame, the action other than the team-up scene just wasn't all that great. And on that note, while the Heartcatch team was better utilized than the Yes team, most of their screen time and focus ended up going to Erika because they really needed to push Laura, which, yeah, is kind of par for the course of Tropical Rouge, but again, save that for the overview. As a result, though, you could argue that they weren't exactly necessary to this movie's plot, having participated in only one on-screen fight, and only really providing the Erika and Laura interactions, even though that time really should have been spent more with Elsa. The Snow Princess's entire plotline is a good example of how Yoshimi Narita can be more than just a comedy writer. There are just a ton of layers to her story that could also coincide well with Laura's arc, like how in spite of her actions, she did show signs that she wanted someone to stop her, but at the same time, her survivor's guilt was preventing her from wanting to say that she had died such a pathetic and unfulfilling death. Such a deep and complex story needed more time to develop that can't really be afforded in a 70-minute crossover film. But as a result, we just got so many sudden twists and turns while trying to make sure that the Heartcatch team felt relevant that it became difficult to get invested in anything. Like, at the very least, you should hint at a comet early into your film, even if there is some real-life hypothesis behind it. But because this film's elements ended up clashing with each other over screen time, it became a bit of an unfocused mess. Thus, while there are some great ideas here, I can't really say they came together well to make for a great film. Overall though, I did kind of enjoy this film, at least for those great ideas and laughably incompetent moments of animation, but yeah, I also can't give my full recommendation even to fans of Tropical Rouge, and definitely not Heartcatch. If you really want a little bit more of the former, maybe just go rewatch the short film that played with Sea of Dreams and just leave this one in the freezer.
Now, I'll say this for the film, no matter what I may think about it, at least it did give me a little more material for the series overview. And don't worry, unlike with this film, I do have at least a few more positive things to say. I mean, at least the show went full JoJo in some of its episodes. Still look forward to it. And until then though, for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go back to my play corner.